Hello everyone, welcome to this edition of Iredell-Statesville Schools EDtalks. Our guest today is Samantha Harris, a teacher at NB Mills Elementary School. Ms. Harris is not only the Teacher of the Year for NB Mills, but she is now the District Teacher of the Year for the Iredell-Statesville Schools. So, hi Ms. Harris, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Ms. Harris, we've talked before, and you are an absolutely phenomenal teacher. I wonder if you could start off by telling us a little bit, why did you choose education as a career?
Well, the story really goes back all the way to when I was a little girl, and my grandparents would tell you that I used to line up all of my dolls as my students and play school, and sometimes my grandparents had to be the participants in my playing school. So I just have always loved teaching and just kind of loved school. I always loved school, all growing up through Iredell-Statesville schools every year. I had a good experience, and my second grade teacher, Miss Reich, really inspired me to become a teacher that year. She let me take home some of her little old teacher manuals, and just kind of inspired that love of learning and teaching so early. And so I went to Appalachian and, became a teacher.
And you did your student teaching at NB Mills, is that correct?
I did, and fell in love with the school and, with the community, and have been there ever since.
10 years, I believe, is that. And you tell an interesting story about when it was time to build your house, your husband worked somewhere else, and tell us that story.
Okay, my husband works in Lenore, and so when we were talking about building a house and looking at land, he wanted to live a little closer to his job in Lenore, and I said, no, I'm going to be at NB Mills, forever. So we ended up building about 6 miles from NB Mills. So
wow.
It's a nice short drive for me.
Yes, well, we're certainly glad you're there. And I love the fact that you say you're going to be there for a while. What inspires you today? This is a tough culture and climate for education in North Carolina right now, but what keeps you motivated and keeps you going?
I would say my students and my coworkers. The students just make coming to work every day enjoyable, and building relationships with them and watching them make growth throughout the year. Just even on hard days, at the end of the day, you feel like when you leave that you really made a difference in that child, whether in small or big ways. And then my coworkers, I think that I have such hardworking people that I work with that they just inspire me every day. On days when I'm feeling tired and I see them giving their all, it just pushes you to give your all too.
A lot of young folks today look at education as a career, and they're discouraged by what they see taking place in the lack of support for public education. Can you, in all honesty, still recommend this as a career?
Absolutely, and you can't ignore the facts that there are definitely things that we need to work on, and it's not a career where you hear, years ago people praise teachers, and you don't hear that from everybody anymore. But I tell people, if you have a heart for kids and you have a passion for teaching, all of that other stuff is just background noise, really. You can, if you come to your job and you love it and you love teaching, then, while you wish things in education were better, it's not going to deter you from having a good, fulfilling career. No one goes into education for the money, but at the end of the day, the rewards, far outweigh that part of it. So.
Right. I've heard an interesting story about each year you give your kids a little magnet, a refrigerator magnet, and it's got your personal phone numbers on there. And you encourage your kids to call you if they need help. I heard one really inspiring story about a situation where you got a call from the police department one weekend. Could you share that story with our listeners?
Yes. So I learned that from my student teaching experience. Julia Eckliff recommended that I give my number to students, and for years, it was just they would call me about homework or, very simple things. But one night I got a call around midnight, and it was the sheriff's department, and they were at one of my students' homes. There'd been some kind of altercation in the home, and the police had been called, but when they arrived, there were no adults in the home. So they asked the little girl, what are your parents' number? What's grandparents? She knew no one's number at all to call. So she went to her refrigerator, got the magnet that had my number and said, call my teacher. And so they did, and I went and got her that night, and it kept her from having to go into foster care that night until the family could get, that situation resolved.
Wow, my goodness. What an inspiring story. That's the real heart of a teacher, to do something like that. That brings tears to my eyes every time I hear you tell that story. Well, NB Mills, the state of North Carolina has labeled NB Mills as an F school. And boy, that's heartbreaking, because we know that it is not an F school. It's not a failing school. You guys consistently make high growth in that school. And what I try to tell people is, when those children come to you in August, you guys are outperforming many of our other schools, in that you're taking that child from a very, very low point and you're moving them up that continuum greatly. I wonder if you could talk to us just a little bit about your perception of the A through F report card, and does that have an impact on you, your morale, and how does it feel to be called a failing school?
That is something that I think all of us at NB Mills are really passionate about, because being labeled an F is a trickle-down effect on how it impacts everyone. Our kids work so hard, and at the end of the year, we are so proud of them, because, like you said, they come in and many of them have had no preschool experience. They've had no one to read to them at home, no one to show social norms. And so they come in, really, below their peers at other schools. But like you said, by the end of the year, many of them are all caught up and they've showed tremendous growth, and the same thing at each grade level. So at the end of the year, we are so proud of those students. They're proud of themselves. Their parents are proud. And we're proud that we saw so much growth. And then, and then the grade comes out and it's an F. And so, now, everyone, no one feels that proudness, because, we're labeled that F. And it does affect morale, because, I was just getting my hair done at the hairdresser, and she said, "Where do you work again?" And I said, "NB Mills." And she said, "Oh, I saw that in the paper." And I said, "Don't believe everything you read. It's a great school, and the kids are making tremendous growth." So
I think it's ironic that when we survey your parents, 92% of the parents at NB Mills give you an A or B. And that speaks volumes. When you go to the customer, the end user of the product, and you say, "Evaluate me, grade me," your parents grade you extremely high. And I tell members of the General Assembly that story all the time. Listen to the parents, listen to the folks that are putting their children, or better yet, come visit the school and see for yourself. The report card in North Carolina is basing evaluations on one test, one day. And there is no professional adult that would say, "I want to be evaluated on one day's performance out of a calendar year." But that's what we're choosing to do. And we're not giving schools credit for the things that are going on those other 179 days of the school year. So that's a mission. We've got to continue to tell that story and get the General Assembly to reconsider this A through F report card. At least start recognizing schools for the growth that they're making. Absolutely. If they would just do that, it would make all the difference in the world. Well, what else about the teaching profession is, what are some of the changes? You've been at this 10 years now. Any big changes that you've seen during your career, good or bad?
Absolutely. I think, even with funding being cut every year and us having to do more with less resources, I'm amazed at, we go to professional development on early release days and the things that, are being implemented, and when we go to Innovation Showcase to see what other teachers across the district are doing in their classroom. It's amazing to me that every year, it seems like it gets better and better. I know for me, my teaching practice has improved so much over the last 10 years. And so teachers are continuing to make great growth, even with the cuts and everything else.
Yeah. I taught 22 years, and I look at new teachers, young teachers like you today. I can't hold a candle to the work that you guys. Your approach today is much more scientific than when I was a teacher. You guys test your students very, very early. You find out what their strengths and weaknesses are. You develop specific lessons to shore up those weak spaces. back when I was a teacher, we used the old shotgun approach. It was one lesson. It was pretty well delivered to all 30 kids, and some got it and some didn't, and there wasn't a whole lot of remediation and whatnot. But it's a much, much more scientific approach to learning and engaging kids.
Absolutely.
One more question. Tell us about relationships, and how important is it for teachers to develop relationships with students and parents?
Yeah, that's absolutely what I tell all of the beginning teachers who I mentor, is that you can have the best instructional practices in the world, but if you haven't invested in those kids and formed a relationship, they're not going to perform the way you want them to. And the same thing goes with the parents. At MB Mills, we have a system of, at the beginning of the year, we make sure that we have a positive interaction with each parent before the year starts, because at some point you may have to tell them something negative about their child, but if you've already let them know that you care about their child and spoke some praise into them, then the parents are going to be on your side and help you support that year. So I think for parents and students, relationships is key.
Absolutely. And obviously you're a master at building those relationships. So congratulations again to you, not only as the Teacher of the Year for NB Mills, but now all of Iredell County. And you're representing nearly 1,400 teachers now. And I know you had your interviews just this week for the district level competition. We wish you well with that. I've got a prediction. I bet you're going on. I've known a lot of Teacher of the Years in our district, and you really are a standout. We're very, very proud of you.
Thank you very much.
Well, best of luck at the next level of competition.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for tuning in today. We hope you'll join us for future episodes and continue to meet some of the great folks that work for the Iredell-Statesville schools and hear about some of the good things going on in your school system. Thanks again for tuning in.